Welcome to the podcast on almost everything important. I am endurance cyclist Raymond L. Williams, author of 16 books and distinguished emeritus professor at the University of California. The topic for today's podcast, and in this case YouTube, is Cycling, Spinning, and Training 114. So this is the 14th of our cycle of 64 podcasts related to cycling, spinning, and training. More specifically, the podcast for today, and as it turns out, the YouTube for today, is on two basic subjects. I have my inspirational cyclist for the day, which I frequently have on these podcasts, which you can find on our website. If you'd like to see a list of all our podcasts, they're on our website, www.thetop64.com. So it's www.thetop64.com. So there we have a list of all our podcasts, including ones unrelated to cycling, spinning, and training. So today's podcast, as I was saying, has two parts. The first part, I'd like to talk a little bit about our inspirational cyclist of the day. As I was starting to say, I often highlight a cyclist that I hope will be inspirational for you. I'm imagining that you're someone more or less beginning or in intermediate stages of cycling and spinning. If you're an advanced cyclist or a professional cyclist, most of these podcasts won't offer that much for you, particularly these early podcasts. If you're an advanced amateur, maybe, you can check in and see if there's anything to learn. In today's case, I have then this inspirational cyclist, and then I want to get back again to my ongoing topic of electrolytes, because as much as we all know that electrolytes are good for us and necessary for cycling, I don't think we take it quite seriously enough, and also, more importantly, I don't think we're very good in general about finding and using high quality electrolytes. So that's kind of like my intention, to talk about in the second part of this, some low quality and some high quality electrolytes. And I'm just going to put it right up front. If you're taking Gatorade, then you need to listen to this podcast, because in American culture, Gatorade has become kind of the equivalent of electrolytes. People say, are you taking electrolytes? Yes, I take Gatorade. So unfortunately, Gatorade, which is full of sugar, has become the most popular choice, or the most widely used thing for electrolytes, as if Gatorade were the only solution. They were the pioneers, and since we're doing this as also a YouTube today, because I wanted to give some visual images sometimes of what we're talking about. And so this is kind of a practice run introductory one today. So in introducing myself, as you noticed today, I introduced myself as an endurance cyclist. What does this mean? I'm going to show you the kind of stuff that I have done. And this is going to be the only time I'm going to show off on these YouTubes. I'm not going to dance or say I'm cool, but I wanted to show you what my credentials are as an endurance cyclist, what that means when I say endurance cyclist. That's endurance cyclist as opposed to a racer that races short sprints. So there are a lot more people that do short sprints than that do endurance cycling, although for those over the age of 35, endurance cycling is a much more likely opportunity for you to excel. I started endurance cycling at exactly the age of 43, actually. So there's hope if you're above 35 and discovering you're no longer that fast, or you weren't as fast as you were before, because your fast twitch muscles are in fact fading, and your slow twitch muscles, the good news is, are actually more available to you. So that's why if you're interested in endurance cycling, you might be interested in, if you're a mountain biker, this one. This is my silver buckle from the Leadville 100 mountain bike race. So this is my credential number one for saying on this YouTube and this podcast that I'm an endurance cyclist. As a matter of fact, when I got this thing for the first time in 1998, I did it 4 times, this silver buckle. That was for riding 100 miles on dirt with 14,000 feet of vertical climbing. You can Google it and check it out. If you're not a mountain biker yet or haven't done that much, you might not have heard of it. But if you're a serious mountain biker, nowadays you probably have heard of the Leadville 100 mountain bike race, particularly since the year Lance Armstrong won the race. So I say he's won it, but I've finished it with a silver buckle 4 times. How do you like that? So anyway, he could probably do it every day the rest of his life if he wanted to. But in any case, my second credential here for calling myself an endurance cyclist is this finisher's medal for the Furnace Creek 508. So this was 508 miles, more or less straight through. We actually have endurance races like that. I wasn't familiar with the idea of riding through the night till I started endurance cycling, and I found it a particular challenge actually. One challenge is training for going 508 miles. The other challenge for me was staying up all night to do it. And so I definitely didn't win that race. I barely finished it in time to get that medal you just saw because I had to take naps along the way, I'm going to have to admit. And then I have this other Furnace Creek 508 because I finished it solo once, and one of these medals was for doing it as a duo. So that's an opportunity. If you can't even fathom the idea of riding a bike 508 miles straight through, you can team up with someone, take turns, and then get a little chance to nap along the way, cat nap a little bit. And then I have this for my mountain biking. I ended in 2002 with endurance mountain biking with this thing. This is for 3rd place in the World Solo Championships that were hosted by the 24 Hours of Adrenaline people. Those are some bicycle race organizers from Canada. From what I understand, I think still the main organizers of 24-hour mountain bike races. So you only have to stay up one night for that one if you do it solo. So I mastered the idea. I didn't actually master it, but I learned to survive for 24 hours on a mountain bike 6 times. I trained to do this 6 different times. The 6th time was this for the World Solo Championships. I think I might have done it one more time, a 7th time, with a friend duo, but I didn't find it actually any more restful than when I did it solo. So if that's any help for you. So those are my credentials. Since we're doing YouTube today, I wanted to bring them out and show in kind of what I'm talking about when I say I'm an endurance cyclist. Other than that, the main reason that I feel like I've got a few things to say isn't from what I know innately, but what I picked up from advanced amateurs and some retired pros along the way of training for all of these things. There were a total of 64 of them. And so I did bike camps and I tried to hang out with professional trainers, like I said, usually retired cyclists. And in the other podcast, you can hear about some of these people and the wisdom they kindly shared with me. So our inspirational figure for the day isn't actually me, even though I've used up a few minutes here on our podcast talking about myself. My inspirational figure is this Catalan that I've mentioned already, but I haven't said that much about. His name was Joan Riudavets Mol. Joan Riudavets Mol. So the last name is Riudavets, if you want to Google him. Because he rode his bicycle until he was 114. And I think this is hugely significant because I think the fact that he rode bicycles daily is one of the primary reasons he was so fortunate as to live 114 years. He himself never made a big deal about the cycling, but he did ride his bike pretty much every day to the end when he died of a cold at the age of 114. I wanted to share with you a little bit about what else he did as to promote his longevity, or at least what he did that resulted in his longevity. I'm not sure how self-conscious he was about this. In California, we're all very self-conscious about our age. Once we get really old, like about 30, we get very concerned about our aging and spend the rest of our lives trying to self-consciously promote the idea that we're young. and this goes on. And I don't know if Rio Vadet had that, kind of California, obsession with youth. But in any case, he did talk about his secrets. Journalists talked to him near the end once he became world known as such an old person. Journalists from the United States and Great Britain are the ones that I've seen who've written articles about him. And so he shared some of his secrets. As far as his, I don't like to call it diet, but his nutrition intake, it was basically what we call the Mediterranean diet, right? I think it's a misnomer to call it a diet. It's Mediterranean nutrition. It's the way people in the Mediterranean regions typically eat. They eat a lot of fish, they eat a lot of olive oil. And so what I've really said, chemically speaking, is that obviously they consume a lot of omega-3s. So I've known this for a long time, and during my cycling days, and before, omega-3s were kind of adopted by the doctors, started prescribing it. At least Americans tell me all the time that their doctor prescribes 3 omega-3s a day, as if it were some kind of chemical that, and this was some kind of magic formula or some kind of like medicinal formula that you should eat 3. But that's like saying, as far as I'm concerned, you should take 3 bites of fish a day or something like that. I mean, obviously you can eat as much fish as you want, and you can take as much omega-3 as you want, because it's basically fish oil, right? So, anyway, I think you've heard me carry on about this before if you've heard any of these podcasts. But that was his food for the most part. He did eat some meat, and then he shared some other of his secrets for longevity. He said, quote, and this is a translation into English. I read this in English. I don't know exactly how he said this in Catalan or in Spanish, but what he said was, his one secret to his longevity was keep moving and keep going forward. So that's a great cyclist motto, of course, because we have a parallel motto in cycling, which is a moving bike doesn't fall over, or a non-moving bike falls over, unless I guess you're on a spinner's bike, right? So keep moving, keep going forward. One of the ways I interpret that is keep moving daily. One of the ways I would restate that is, the way I understand it, I guess I should say, is keep moving daily and keep moving forward daily. So I would say, he doesn't say keep moving forward for exactly 30 minutes a day the way your doctor said, or the way that a lot of fitness trainers might tell you to. Well, the other one that he says is, without really talking about, he doesn't really talk about exercise or diets per se at all. He also says, in addition to keep moving, keep going forward, he says, live calmly and treat other people well, right? Live calmly and treat other people well. This kind of advice is coming more and more into Western medicine. Doctors are starting to recognize that how we live has much to do with how healthy we are. And I've definitely noticed that on my bicycle. If I don't enter and end a bicycling event with a calm sense of mind, it's not going to be a good day. And so I think that applies to a lot of things. The other thing that I wanted to point out about his life, besides what I've said already, that he rode his bike daily. He didn't do our minimal of 20 minutes 3 times a week of cardio workout. We sort of, some doctors said that once, and we've cited it all over. 20 minutes a day, 3 days a week, the minimal cardio workout. There's no scientific evidence that you'll live any longer by doing that. There's some scientific evidence that if you don't do any cardio movement at all, it will be a problem. But what I've noticed with these super centenarians is they tend to be active every day. So I'm a big fan of daily activity, rather worrying about whether I do 20 minutes of cardio activity 3 days a week. I do, though, when in my bike rides, remember in the back of my mind that my bike ride should include 20 minutes of more or less intense cardio activity, because that pushes me a little more toward cardio health. But what did he do? He rode his bike every day, he swam, and he danced. So I wanted to share that because there's a lot of scientific research related to how communities that live a long time tend to be both physically active and dance. So there's something to be said, something that's special about combining music with physical activity. Of course, that's what we call dancing. And when you think about it, that's exactly what spinning is too. It's a combination of movement with dance. They also have in common the fact that they're both social activities. That is, we take spinning classes with groups, and we either take dancing classes or we go to dances, right? We go to clubs. But they're both social activities. So being socially engaged with music and physical activity, for some reason, seems to be very, very healthy. It's a commonality of long living communities, of supercentenarians, for example. So I think it's interesting to note that even though this Rio Davet was not a member of one of these now known communities, there are about 5 of them that have been documented in the world, in which most members of the community live over 90 years healthily. They're active in their 90s and in their 100s. They're still riding their bicycles. They're still hiking up to their villages. They're still dancing to music with their friends and other members of the community. So Rio Davet definitely fits among them, even though where he lived in Menorca, there were not as large number of supercentenarians as in some of these other communities. So that's really what I have to say about him. I think it's important to remember him because it's a reminder of why it's a healthy thing to do, to be on a bicycle or a spinning bike, independent of what we think our New Year's resolution is, or independent of what we think our ideal weight should be, or independent of how good looking we think we might be if we were more healthy or more physically fit or something like that. Independent of all those immediate needs many of us have, the fact is that long-living people tend to be very physically active, and in some cases they're cyclists, So that's what I have about our man Rio Davet today. I wanted to throw in just a few minutes of ongoing information about electrolytes, because I think electrolytes are in that category of a lot of other things in American culture that we know are good, but we hear about it so much, it's easy to sort of ignore. And I noticed that in physical activities such as spinning that are relatively short, in other words, activities that are an hour or two, a lot of people cheat on their electrolytes because they can, right? In a certain way, you can. In other words, if you're just going to go out and spin once and do nothing else the rest of the week, and you don't take any electrolytes, you're probably not going to notice the difference. It's entirely possible, let's say, put it that way, that you're not going to notice the difference. And I think a lot of people that I know in the fitness club that I go to, right now I go to LA Fitness in January of 2019 as I'm recording this. I have friends there that spin once or twice a week, and they're pretty indifferent, I guess I would say, about the urgent need for their electrolytes. Yeah, I guess, I notice it because I take electrolytes very, very seriously, because when I'm on a bike, it's probably the one time you see me on a bike is probably just once of 5 or 6 times that week, one way or another, whether I'm on a bicycle or I'm spinning or whatever it is. And that was how I trained for about 10 years. And I had to learn to take electrolytes very seriously. But, so I think that if my understanding of the reasons why people are spinning once or twice a week when it would be healthier to do it 3 or 4 times a week, and the primary reason people give is that their schedule doesn't allow it. But I think another important factor is that if you're not really careful about your electrolytes, you just don't feel like doing it more than once a week. In other words, you do some intense activity like that, you lose electrolytes, you don't pay much attention to it, but you do notice that for the next few hours, maybe even the next day, you just kind of have that weak feeling, that kind of empty feeling, and you just really are not motivated to do the same exercise again the next day or even 2 days later. And so, that weak feeling, I think, is in about 80% of the cases related primarily to electrolytes, because that's what we cheat on the most. We don't cheat on protein as much because most of us get a reasonable amount of protein in our food. And so, sooner or later, within an hour or two of our workout or our ride, one way or another, we're probably getting our protein. But we have to be a little more self-conscious about the electrolytes, because our depletion is pretty high after something as intense as a spinning class. So as an instructor of spinning, I feel that half of what the students need to learn isn't anything I can teach them in class. It isn't anything technical. It isn't anything even about their physical ability. I think it's mostly just about the fact that about half of the people I see aren't paying that much attention to their electrolytes. And then much worse, to make things worse, in our culture, in American culture, we equate electrolytes with Gatorade because they've been the most successful in selling electrolytes. The problem is they sell it with tons of sugar, just like almost every other business does, because sugar is good and it tastes good, right? It's bad for us, but it tastes good. So we'll happily buy Gatorade if they'll give us some sugar along with it. And I just checked yesterday at the store, and the standard Gatorade has 21 grams of electrolyte. So let me just offer some alternatives so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm not in the business of promoting any products. No one's paying me yet. If any of these places these companies that I'm talking about today ever do pay me, I'll just talk about them. But meanwhile, I'll just give you some examples. Here's some people. This is called Hammer Nutrition. They don't sell in supermarkets, but they do sell stuff in bike shops and online. They sell these things called Endurolytes. This is pure electrolytes and with no sugar. So this is like the opposite, the exact opposite of what you get in Gatorade in terms of sugar. Like there's no sugar, it's a pill with electrolytes. And a rich set of electrolytes. You can't see everything that's in here, but they've got the sodium, they've got the potassium, they've got the magnesium, along with a few other little things that are good for you if you're sweating a lot. And so here's another example of something I just ran into today at a local nutritional store. The company is called Trace Minerals, and I believe this bottle is called Electrolyte Stamina. I bought it to show you because they even have a more rich panorama of electrolyte replacements. They do have, of course, the sodium, the potassium, and the magnesium, but again, even more of the things that are just handy backups. If you're doing this intense stuff to your body, there's very little exercise we do with any regularity that's as intense as spinning. So unless you're some kind of a heavy-duty weightlifter, but if that's the case, you know how to do the replacements. Here's another one that's like quasi-popular, actually, among cyclists that go on events. If you go on cycling events, these Hammer Nutrition people will have this stuff out. This is called Heed, and it's kind of like the non-sugar version of Gatorade. That's how I explain it to people when I introduce this to people. And again, I do this not because I have making any money promoting these products, but because I feel bad for people that are going out exercising, building muscle, which is going to put a little weight on. Then they drink this stuff full of sugar, and then they gain more weight. And after about a month of this, they throw up their hands and they say, I worked my butt off and now I've gained 6 pounds. 3 of it they gain through muscle, and then they actually are carrying more body fat if they're eating all this sugar, So I feel that I'm losing the battle as a spinning instructor if people are gulping down, gulping down in those evening classes. They're going home drinking Gatorade and they're going to sleep on 21 grams of sugar. That's kind of a nightmare nutritional scenario. And while I have the benefit today of our YouTube for this podcast, I'm going to show you also a visual of this stuff called keto protein. Again, you might think I'm working for the keto people. I'm not, although if they ever want to hire me, I'd happily do it. But here, this is just a little package you could have in your car. That's why I like this, is like This is convenient. You can have a little package of keto protein, and it's very difficult as you start now watching this to find protein also that's quickly accessible to you. It's very difficult to find that doesn't have too much sugar to throw off, your goals as an athlete that wants to look better. In most cases, from what I can tell, almost everybody that's in spinning classes, they're interested in cardio and they're interested in losing weight. So keto protein is one of several options. I like to go in the clubs and challenge. I ask the people that are selling the protein shakes there, or protein smoothies, whatever they're calling them, what can you give me for a protein shake with less than 2 grams of sugar? And they look at me and they usually just say nothing. But if they're slightly more sophisticated in this and realize that if I'm asking that question, I'm serious about protein and health, they sometimes offer the following, and you can check with them twice then and see if they can offer you just the protein powder in ice and water without throwing all the fruit and the rest of the junk in that has all this sugar. So they're prepared to give you a very sugary protein shake because people will drink it and say, that's good, I like that shake, I'm going to have more. And so they make sales that way. But anyway, you need to know, of course, the price you're paying. I think you're basically not getting anywhere if you're drinking a lot of sugar after these workouts, particularly if you're doing it in the evening. You're doing an evening class, 5:30 p.m., then you're filling your body up with sugar. I think you wake up in the morning kind of behind. I'm not sure if that's the case if your spinning is in the morning, because I haven't seen the analysis of what happens to sugar consumed during the morning after exercise compared to consuming sugar that you sleep on. But for from what I've read, sleeping on sugar or carbohydrates is not good for health loss at all. So that's what I have today for our podcast number. I think we're at 113 or 114, and it's also our first YouTube as we show you our setting for our podcast. I basically have a little table surrounded by all my visual aids. You saw a few of them. I always have a bicycle behind me. I always have a window to my left because I'm typically talking to either myself or one or two other people. And but with the window or the window of a Starbucks, I feel like I'm communicating with all of you as you commute to your on your way to work, or as I understand it, most people that listen to podcasts, you're either on your way to work or you're in the gym working out, and you've discovered you'd rather listen to a podcast than listen to music. So thank you for listening to this podcast instead of your music today. And if you'd like to know the complete list of the podcasts that I do, Raymond L. Williams, either as an academic or as a cyclist or as both, you can go into our website, www.thetop64.com, and you can see a list of these 64 podcasts on cycling, spinning, and training, along with other podcasts that I do for people that share the same academic interests that I happen to. Thank you very much. There he is.